The contractions were 7 minutes apart when Claire Bennett realized the truth. Her husband wasn't driving her to the hospital. He was driving her somewhere to die. The car moved through darkness like something hunted, headlights carving weak paths through snow that fell thick and fast. Claire gripped the dashboard as another wave of pain rolled through her belly, sharp and insistent. Ruby announcing her arrival whether the world was ready or not. "Pull over," she gasped, breath fogging the cold air. "Derek, please, pull over now." Derek kept driving. His knuckles were bone white against the steering wheel, jaw set in that stubborn line she'd learned too well over 6 years of marriage. The windshield wipers scraped against accumulating ice with a rhythm that felt like countdown. Back and forth, marking time until something ended. "We're almost there," he said, voice flat and empty as the road ahead. "Almost where?" Claire fought to keep panic from her voice. "Derek, the hospital is 40 minutes away. The clinic was 10 minutes behind us. I asked you to turn around." "The hospital is better. The clinic delivered Beth's sister's baby last month. They have doctors, equipment, everything we need." Her voice rose despite her attempt at control. "I want you to turn around. I want you at the hospital." His tone carried finality that made her stomach clench worse than any contraction. Claire knew that tone. She'd heard it more each month since showing him those 3 positive pregnancy tests. That tone saying arguing was pointless. His decision was final, her opinion merely noise he'd learned to tune out. Another contraction seized her, stronger this time. She counted through gritted teeth, timing it the way the childbirth class instructor had taught. 60 seconds, getting longer. When it passed, she checked her phone. No signal. They were deep in mountains now, where cell towers didn't reach and the world felt prehistoric and hostile. The screen showed empty bars mocking her desperation. She checked again. Still nothing. Checked a third time, as if her need could will signal into existence. "How much longer?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. 30 minutes, maybe 35. The car began to slow. Derek pumped the brakes gently, movements deliberate and controlled. Too controlled. The engine made a sound like coughing, like something dying and cold. Then it simply stopped, as if someone had reached in and turned off its will to live. They rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Snow piled against windows, creating a white cocoon that felt less like protection and more like burial. The wipers froze mid-swipe. The heater fell silent. Only wind remained, howling against the car's frame like wolves surrounding wounded prey. "What happened?" Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. Derek turned the key. Nothing. He tried again, pumping the gas pedal. The engine clicked, uselessly refusing to wake. He slammed his palm against the steering wheel, but the gesture felt theatrical, rehearsed. "Derek." "I don't know." He still wouldn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the dead dashboard, on gauges that no longer moved. On the future he'd already decided. It just died. Claire felt the first true spike of fear pierce through her pain. They were alone on this mountain road. No cars had passed in 20 minutes. Snow was falling harder now. Thick, wet flakes erasing the world beyond their windows, and contractions were coming faster. 7 minutes apart now, maybe less. "Try again," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. He turned the key. Click, click. Nothing. "We need to call someone." "I have no signal." Claire held up her phone, showing him the empty bars she'd already checked a dozen times. Derek pulled out his phone, stared at it for a long moment, then opened the glove compartment. Claire watched as he placed his phone inside, closed it with a soft click that sounded too final. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Saving the battery." His voice remained flat, emotionless, like he was reading lines from a script he'd memorized. "In case we need it later." "We need it now. Try calling." "There's no signal, I just told you." "Then we flag down a car." Derek looked out at swirling snow, at empty roads stretching in both directions toward nothing. "In this storm? Nobody's coming through here tonight." Claire felt another contraction building, a wave gathering strength in the distance. She pressed both hands to her belly, tried to breathe through it like they'd taught her. But breathing didn't stop the pain. didn't slow Ruby's determined journey into a world that suddenly seemed impossibly hostile. When she could speak again, she asked, "So what do we do?" Derek unbuckled his seatbelt. The click was loud in the silent car. He zipped up his jacket, pulled his hood over his head with movements that seemed practiced, prepared. "I'll walk," he said. "There was a gas station about 2 miles back. I'll get help." 2 miles, Claire stared at him. "In this storm? Derek, that's insane." "It's not insane, it's the only option." He opened the car door and cold air rushed in, stealing the last remnants of warmth. Snow swirled around him like angry spirits. "Lock the doors. Stay warm. I'll be back with help." He grabbed the keys from the ignition, shoved them into his pocket. That simple action made Claire's breath catch. "Wait, give me the keys, in case the car starts." "If the car starts, I'll need them at the gas station to tell them what kind of car it is." The logic was wrong, but before Claire could process why, Derek was stepping out into the storm. Derek Wado, but he was already walking, his dark jacket disappearing into white like ink dissolving in milk. Claire wiped the fogged window with her sleeve, pressed her face against cold glass, watched as the faint light from his phone flashlight bobbed in the distance. Then it turned. Then it vanished completely. Claire sat in sudden, profound silence. The car was already getting colder. She could see her breath forming clouds that dissipated slowly. She pulled Derek's jacket from the back seat, the spare one he'd left behind, the expensive wool blend his mother had bought him last Christmas. It smelled like his cologne, that woody scent that had once made her feel safe and now made her stomach turn. She wrapped it around her shoulders, and that's when she saw it. On the dashboard, right where his hand had been moments before, sat his wedding ring. The gold band caught dim light filtering through snow-covered windshield. Claire picked it up with trembling fingers. It was still warm from his skin. She turned it over in her palm, read the inscription inside that she'd had engraved 7 years ago. "Forever yours." Their wedding date etched beneath in numbers that now felt like countdown rather than celebration. He'd taken it off, before leaving, while she wasn't looking. Derek had removed his wedding ring and left it behind like a signature on a document declaring her fate. Claire's throat tightened. She checked her phone again, a reflex born of desperation. No signal. She tried calling anyway, listened to the fail message, tried Derek's number. It went nowhere, dissolved into static and empty air. She opened her messages. The last text from him was 3 days ago. Working late. Working late. He'd been working late constantly, every night for 2 weeks. Sometimes he didn't come home until after she was asleep. Sometimes he slept in the guest room, claimed he didn't want to wake her with his restlessness. But Claire hadn't been sleeping well either. How could she, with Ruby pressing on her bladder every 20 minutes, with her back aching and ankles swelling, and husband growing more distant by the day? The contractions were 6 minutes apart now. Claire looked at empty road ahead, then behind. No lights, no cars, just snow and darkness and the sound of wind testing the car's weaknesses, finding gaps where cold could creep in. She locked the doors like he told her to, then unlocked them. What if someone came to help and couldn't get in? She locked them again, unlocked them. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the mechanism. This wasn't happening. Any second now Derek would come back. He'd forgotten something, his wallet, his phone charger, something that would give him an excuse to return. He'd tap on the window and she'd unlock the door and he'd say he was sorry, that he was just stressed, that everything would be okay. But the road stayed empty. The snow kept falling, and Derek's footprints had already been erased by wind, as if he'd never been there at all. Claire picked up the wedding ring from the cup holder where she'd set it. She couldn't hold it anymore. Looking at it made her stomach hurt worse than contractions, made bile rise in her throat. She tried to think clearly through pain and fear. The hospital was too far to walk, especially 9 months pregnant, especially in active labor. The clinic was behind them, also too far. And Derek had taken the keys anyway. So even if she wanted to try starting the car herself, she couldn't. So she would wait. Someone would come. Someone always came. This was a state highway, after all. People drove here. Just not right now, not in this storm. But soon. When weather cleared, she reached for the heat controls before remembering the car was dead. No heat, no radio, no nothing. Just her and Ruby and rapidly cooling air. Her water hadn't broken yet. That was good. That meant she had time. Beth had told her that. Beth, who was a nurse and knew about these things. First babies took forever. 12 hours, sometimes 20. Claire had time. Another contraction hit, this one lasting longer. She counted 45 seconds. She'd been counting them since they left the house, tracking their evolution from uncomfortable to painful to unbearable. The snow piled up on the windshield, soft and thick, blocking what little view remained. Claire was in a snow globe now, a cold, dark snow globe where the only movement was falling white and the only sound was her own labored breathing. She thought about her phone, about the glove compartment. Derek had put his phone in there and said he was saving the battery, but that didn't make sense. If there was no signal, the phone wouldn't waste battery searching for one anyway. Claire leaned forward as much as her belly allowed, pressed against the steering wheel, and popped open the glove compartment. Derek's phone was there, face down next to the car manual and insurance papers. And next to another phone. A second phone. Claire's breath caught. She picked it up carefully as if it might explode in her hands. It was cheap, a burner phone, the kind you bought at gas stations with prepaid minutes. The screen was cracked, spider-webbed across glass. No password. She opened it. Text messages filled the screen. Hundreds of them, scrolling back months. From someone saved in contacts as simply, V. Can't wait to see you, V. Same hotel? V. Your wife still doesn't know? V. Claire's vision blurred. She scrolled up, found older messages, watched the narrative of her husband's betrayal unfold in brief, damning sentences. I need more time. Derek. The baby wasn't planned. Derek, I'll leave after it's born. Derek, the phone slipped from Claire's hands, clattered to the floor of the passenger seat. She pressed her fist to her eyes, tried to breathe, tried to think, tried to process what she just learned. She wasn't crazy. This was real. This was happening. Derek wasn't walking to get help. Derek was leaving. He'd planned this. The distant hospital instead of close clinic. The car breaking down in the middle of nowhere. Taking the keys, removing his wedding ring. All of it carefully orchestrated, timed to perfection. The moment when she was most vulnerable, most helpless, most dependent on him. That's when he'd chosen to abandon her. Another contraction ripped through her. Deeper now, more insistent. Ruby was coming. Ruby was coming, and Claire was completely, utterly alone. She tried the door handle, some desperate part of her brain suggesting she could walk, could make it back to the clinic. But when she pushed the door open, wind slammed it back against her, nearly crushing her fingers. Snow sprayed her face, stole her breath. Cold was like knives against her skin. She pulled the door shut, gasping. She couldn't walk. Not in this, not 9 months pregnant, not in active labor. Claire locked the door. This time she meant it. She pulled Derek's jacket tighter, even though it smelled like him, like his lies, like the cologne V probably loved when she pressed her face against his neck. The wedding ring sat in the cup holder, mocking her with its false promise. Claire grabbed it. She rolled down the window just a crack, just enough. Then she threw the ring as hard as she could into the storm. It disappeared into white, swallowed whole. Good. Let it stay there. Let it freeze and get buried and never be found. Let it become another thing Derek lost when he decided to throw everything away. Claire rolled the window back up. Her arm was covered in snow. She brushed it off, but her fingers were already going numb, cold seeping into her bones with terrifying efficiency. The contractions were 5 minutes apart now. Outside, wind howled, snow fell, darkness pressed in from all sides. And Claire Bennett was completely, terrifyingly alone. The stick had 2 pink lines. Claire stared at them in the bathroom 3 months earlier, before the snow, before the betrayal, when she still believed in the possibility of happy endings. She'd taken 3 tests, lined them up on the counter like evidence in a trial. All positive, all showing those unmistakable pink lines, all confirming that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Her hands shook as she looked at them. 3 little white sticks, 3 sets of pink lines, 3 confirmations that she and Derek were about to become parents. "Derek," she called through the bathroom door, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you come here for a second?" Footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. Derek stood there in his work clothes, navy suit, blue tie, hair perfectly styled for another day of selling houses to people who could barely afford them. He was handsome in that conventional way that had first attracted her, sharp jawline, clear eyes, the kind of smile that made clients trust him with the biggest purchase of their lives. "What's up?" he asked. Claire picked up one of the tests, held it out to him, let herself smile despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "We're pregnant." Derek took the test. He looked at the lines. His face went completely blank, as if someone had wiped away every emotion with a single stroke. Then, a beat too late, he smiled. But the smile was too bright, too forced, stretched across his face like plastic. "That's great," he said, his voice pitched half an octave too high. "Wow, that's really great. Are you okay?" Claire searched his face for genuine reaction, for the joy she'd hoped to see. "Yeah, yes, I'm fine, I'm great, this is great." He set the test down carefully on the counter, his movements precise. "I just need to process. This is big." "We've been talking about kids for years," Claire said softly, watching him. "We planned this. I know we have, and I want them. I do. I'm just surprised." He put his hands on her shoulders, looked into her eyes. The smile was still there, still wrong. "Surprised in a wonderful way. I'm going to be a dickhead." He kissed her forehead, but his lips felt cold. Then he checked his watch. "I have a showing at 9, he said. "But we'll celebrate tonight, okay? We'll go to that Italian place you love. We'll tell everyone. We'll start planning." "Okay," Claire said, because what else could she say? He left. She heard the front door close, heard his car start, heard him drive away. And she stood in the bathroom looking at her reflection in the mirror, a woman who should be glowing with joy but instead felt the first whisper of doubt creeping into her heart. She told herself it was shock. Men process things differently. Derek just needed time to let it sink in. Once he had time to think, once reality settled, he'd be excited. But he didn't get excited. The weeks passed. Claire's belly began to swell, just slightly at first, then more noticeably. And Derek grew more distant with each week, as if her changing body was something he needed to escape rather than celebrate. He worked late every night, sometimes until 9 or 10. He'd come home and eat the dinner she'd left for him, reheating it in the microwave without calling to her, without sharing his day, without asking about hers. Then he'd go to bed without kissing her goodnight. "How was your day?" she'd ask when she caught him in the kitchen. "Fine. Did the Morrison deal close?" "Not yet. Want to talk about baby names?" "I'm tired, Claire. Can we do this tomorrow?" Tomorrow never came. Claire tried to tell herself it was stress. The real estate market was slow. Money was tight. Derek was worried about providing for a family. That was all. That had to be all. He was just overwhelmed, just adjusting, just processing in his own way. But then there was the phone. Derek kept his phone on him constantly now, in the shower while he slept. When it buzzed, which happened at all hours, he'd check it immediately, his face illuminated by blue glow. Then he'd leave the room. 5 minutes later, he'd return, sliding the phone back into his pocket, offering no explanation. "You're on your phone constantly," Claire mentioned one evening, trying to keep her tone light rather than accusatory. Derek looked up from the screen, his eyes cold. "I have clients. They don't care what time it is." "At midnight?" "Yes, Claire, at midnight. Some people work odd hours." His tone was sharp, defensive, the tone of someone with something to hide. The conversation ended there. It always ended when she pushed too hard, when she asked questions he didn't want to answer. Claire told herself she was being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones made women emotional, made them see problems that weren't there, made them read too much into innocent situations. She was overthinking things, but she wasn't. One afternoon when Claire was 4 months along, Beth came over. Beth Morrison, curly red hair, freckles scattered across her nose, the kind of brutal honesty that hurt sometimes but always came from love. They'd been best friends since college, had survived roommate drama and terrible boyfriends, and all the disasters of their 20s together. They sat in the living room of the small apartment Claire and Derek rented in Queens, drinking tea. Decaf for Claire, strong and black for Beth. Beth watched her over the rim of her mug, those sharp eyes missing nothing. "How are things with Derek?" "Fine," Claire said automatically. "Claire." "What?" "You're my best friend. I can tell when you're lying, your left eye twitches." Claire set down her tea. Her hands found her belly, which was just starting to show now, just beginning to announce to the world that something was growing inside her. "He's distant, since I told him about the baby." "Distant how?" "He works late every night. He barely talks to me. He flinches when I try to touch him, like my pregnant body disgusts him." Saying it aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Beth was quiet for a long moment, studying her tea like it held answers. Then she sighed. "Honey, I've been biting my tongue for years." "What does that mean?" "It means I never liked him." "Not really." Beth's voice was gentle but firm. "He's charming, sure, he's handsome, but there's something missing. Something hollow underneath all that polish." "You never said anything." "Because you loved him, and I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe he'd be good to you. But Claire, if he's pulling away now, during your pregnancy, when you need him most—" Beth reached across and took Claire's hand. "That's a red flag the size of Texas." "Maybe he's just scared," Claire said, hearing how weak the excuse sounded even as she spoke it. "First time dad jitters." "Maybe." Beth didn't sound convinced. "But promise me something. If it gets worse, if you need help, you call me, day or night. You hear me?" "I will," Claire promised. But she didn't call, because admitting things were bad meant they were actually bad. And Claire wasn't ready to face that truth yet. The months crawled by with slow inevitability of a glacier carving through stone. Claire's belly grew bigger. Derek grew more absent, more ghost-like, as if he was already practicing for the disappearing act he'd eventually perfect. He missed the anatomy scan where they learned they were having a girl. Missed the childbirth class where other couples held hands and practiced breathing together. Missed her birthday in October, came home at midnight with no explanation and no apology. Always with an excuse. Always with work. Always with something more important than her. Claire stopped asking him to be involved. It hurt less that way. She prepared for the baby alone. Set up the nursery alone, painting the walls soft yellow, because they couldn't afford the expensive crib, bedding she'd imagined. Read the parenting books alone while Derek worked late, or slept in the guest room, or simply wasn't there. And then there was Derek's mother. Vivian Bennett came to visit when Claire was 7 months pregnant. Tall and thin and wearing pearls. Always wearing pearls, like armor made of privilege. She looked around the small Queen's apartment with obvious distaste, her nose wrinkling as if the modest furnishings offended her personally. "You're showing quite a lot," Vivian said instead of hello, her eyes traveling over Claire's swollen belly with undisguised judgment. "That's how pregnancy works," Claire replied, trying to keep her voice level. I hope you're not eating for two. That's a myth, you know. You'll never lose the weight." Vivian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Claire bit her tongue, tasted blood. Derek stood in the kitchen during this exchange, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to hear, pretending his mother wasn't insulting his pregnant wife in their own home. Vivian sat on the couch, crossed her legs, inspected her manicured nails like they were more interesting than the conversation. "Derek tells me things have been difficult." "Things have been fine," Claire said it carefully. "That's not what I heard. I heard you've been very emotional, very demanding." Vivian's tone suggested she was doing Claire a favor by having this conversation. "Excuse me?" "Pregnancy hormones. They make women irrational. You need to be more understanding of my son's needs." Claire looked at Derek, who was still staring at his phone, still refusing to defend her, still choosing silence over support. "I think you should leave." Vivian's eyebrows rose. "I'm trying to help you." "You're not helping. You're insulting me in my own home." Vivian stood, smoothed her designer skirt with careful movements. "I see the hormones are even worse than Derek described. I'll come back when you're more reasonable." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume. Derek followed her out into the hallway. Claire could hear them talking in hushed voices, could hear Vivian's sharp tones and Derek's placating murmurs. When Derek came back inside, he closed the door softly. She means well, he said without looking at Claire. No, she doesn't. She's concerned about us. She called me fat and irrational, Derek. She's from a different generation. They say things differently. Claire felt tears building, the hot kind that came from anger rather than sadness. Are you really defending her right now? Derek sighed that long-suffering sigh, the one that made her feel like she was exhausting him just by existing. I'm too tired to fight, Claire. Can we just drop it? He went to the bedroom, closed the door, left her standing in the living room, one hand on her belly, feeling Ruby kick inside her like she was already trying to escape this family she'd been born into. It's okay, Claire whispered to her daughter. We don't need him. We have each other. But she did need him. She was terrified. First-time mother, no idea what she was doing, and the man who was supposed to be her partner had checked out months ago. The days became weeks. Weeks became the long, slow slide toward her due date. Derek became even more of a ghost. There but not there, present but absent. A hologram of a husband. 3 days before Ruby was due, Claire saw something that should have been her final warning. She'd gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, again, for the millionth time. And when she came back to bed, she passed the guest room. The door was cracked open. Light was on. Claire pushed the door wider. Derek stood with his back to her, folding shirts with careful precision, rolling socks into neat balls, packing everything into a large suitcase that lay open on the bed. What are you doing? Claire asked from the doorway. Derek jumped, turned around. His face went pale. Nothing, just organizing. That's not organizing, that's packing. I might have a work trip in a few weeks, after the baby comes. A conference in Denver, I told you about it. He hadn't told her about it. Claire knew he hadn't. But she was too tired to argue, too heavy and uncomfortable and exhausted to fight about another lie. Okay, she said quietly, just let me know when. She went back to bed, lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling Ruby shift and turn inside her. Derek didn't follow. He stayed in the guest room all night, probably sleeping next to that packed suitcase. In the morning, the suitcase was gone, hidden somewhere. Claire didn't look for it, didn't want to know. Now, sitting in the dead car on the side of the mountain road, Claire understood. The suitcase hadn't been for a work trip. It had been for this, for leaving, for running away while she was at her most vulnerable, her most helpless. Derek had been planning to abandon her for months, maybe longer. Maybe since the day she'd shown him those 3 positive pregnancy tests and his face had gone blank before that plastic smile appeared. Another contraction ripped through her, stronger than before. Claire gasped, doubled over as much as her seatbelt allowed, counted through the pain. 1 minute long, the contractions were 4 minutes apart now. She thought about the second phone in the glove compartment, about the messages from V, about all the nights Derek had worked late, all the times he'd chosen his phone over her, all the distance and coldness and lies that she'd explained away as stress or fatigue or anything except what it actually was. Betrayal, plain and simple. I was so stupid, she said out loud. Her voice sounded strange in the empty car, small and scared and alone. The signs were all there. But she hadn't wanted to see them, hadn't wanted to believe that the man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with her future, was capable of this level of cruelty. She pressed her hand to the window. The glass was ice cold, stealing warmth from her palm. Outside, the snow kept falling, relentless and indifferent. Wind kept howling, a sound like the earth itself was mourning. And Derek's footprints were already covered over, erased completely, like he'd never been there at all. Claire wrapped his jacket tighter around her shoulders, hating that it still smelled like him, hating that she still needed its warmth. The prison door had been unlocked all along. She just hadn't known to look for it, hadn't known she needed to escape until it was too late, until she was trapped on a mountain road in a blizzard with no way out and a baby coming fast. But Claire Bennett had survived worse things than Derek's betrayal. She'd survived her mother's death. She'd survived loneliness and disappointment and all the small deaths that came from loving someone who didn't love you back. She would survive this too. She had to, for Ruby, for the little girl who was about to be born into a world that was cold and cruel and unforgiving. Claire closed her eyes, pressed both hands to her belly, and made a promise. I'll keep us safe, little one. I promise, no matter what happens, I'll keep us safe. Another contraction built, a wave gathering strength in darkness. Claire braced herself, breathed through it, counted the seconds until it passed. 4 minutes apart now, maybe less. Ruby was coming, and Claire was ready. The cold came slowly at first, almost gentle in its approach, like a predator that knew it had all the time in the world. Claire barely noticed it initially. She was too focused on breathing, on timing contractions, on telling herself that help would come, that someone would find her, that this nightmare would end. But after 30 minutes, her fingers started to tingle with that pins and needles sensation warning of worse to come. After 45, she couldn't feel her toes anymore. Couldn't wiggle them inside her boots no matter how hard she tried. After an hour, her breath came out in white clouds that hung in the air like ghosts before slowly dissolving into nothing. The car was freezing, not cold, freezing, the kind that seeped into bones and turned blood sluggish. Claire pulled Derek's jacket tighter, but it wasn't enough. She tucked her hands under her armpits, desperate for any warmth. She curled her legs up on the seat as much as her massive belly would allow, trying to conserve heat the way she'd learned in a wilderness survival class years ago, back when she'd thought knowledge like that was just interesting trivia rather than life-saving information. But it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. Cold crept in through every gap, every imperfection in the car's construction, through door seals, through window edges, through vents that had once blown warm air, but now just allowed the outside to invade. She tried the key in the ignition one more time, a desperate reflex. Maybe the car would start now. Maybe whatever Derek had done could somehow undo itself through sheer force of will. Click, click, nothing. The battery was dead, or the engine was dead, or Derek had sabotaged something, pulled some wire he knew about from his years of selling cars, some trick that kept the engine from ever starting again. Claire looked at the glove compartment again, at the burner phone still sitting there among papers and lies. She picked it up, scrolled through more messages, watching her husband's betrayal unfold in greater detail. Book the hotel for Thursday. V. Can't wait to get away with you. V. How much longer until you leave her? V. Soon. Derek. After the baby? V. Yes, after. Derek. You promise? V. I promise. I just need the right moment. Derek. The right moment. The right moment was now in a storm on an empty road, while Claire was in labor and helpless and completely at his mercy. She threw the phone back in the glove compartment, slammed it shut so hard the car shook. Her hands were trembling violently now, but she wasn't sure if it was from cold or rage or the toxic combination of both. How long had this been going on? Months. The messages went back that far at least. The entire pregnancy probably. Maybe longer. Maybe Derek had been seeing V before Claire even got pregnant, and the baby had just been an inconvenient complication in his affair. Claire thought back to their last anniversary. 6 years married, they'd gone to dinner at an expensive restaurant Derek had chosen, one of those places with cloth napkins and waiters who appeared and disappeared like well-trained phantoms. He'd been on his phone the entire time, texting beneath the table, thinking she couldn't see. She'd complained, he'd said it was work, always work. Work was his universal excuse, his get-out-of-husband duty-free card. Had he been texting V even then? Had V been the reason he never wanted to go anywhere anymore? Never wanted to spend time together? Never wanted to touch her unless it was perfunctory and quick and obviously just going through the motions? Another contraction hit, yanking her brutally out of her thoughts. Claire gripped the steering wheel, breathed through clenched teeth, felt the pain build and crest, and finally, mercifully, began to recede. 70 seconds this time. They were getting longer, stronger, closer together. When it passed, she checked her phone again. Still no signal. Still those empty, mocking bars. Still trapped. She tried to think clearly, to make a plan. Sitting here wasn't working. The car was getting colder by the minute. Contractions were getting more intense. Ruby was coming, whether Claire was ready or not, whether she had help or not. Option 1, walk back to the clinic. But it was 10 miles through a blizzard while in active labor. She'd never make it. She'd collapse in the snow and die there, freeze to death with Ruby still inside her. Option 2, walk to the gas station Derek had mentioned. 2 miles back, still too far, still too dangerous, still certain death. Option 3, flag down a passing car. But no cars had passed in over an hour now. The storm was too bad. The road was probably officially closed, barriers up at both ends, warnings telling people to stay home. Option 4, stay in the car and wait. Hope someone came, hope the storm stopped. Hope her water didn't break and Ruby didn't come too fast. That was her only real option. Stay, wait, hope. Three things Claire had never been particularly good at. She rubbed her hands together, trying to generate friction, trying to create warmth. She blew on them, but her breath barely helped, providing warmth for maybe 5 seconds before cold rushed back in. She thought about the childbirth class she'd attended alone, while other couples held hands and practiced breathing together. The instructor had been relentlessly cheerful, the kind of toxic positivity that made difficult things seem easy if you just believed hard enough. Labor is a beautiful experience, the instructor had said, her smile so wide it looked painful. A natural process. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. But the body didn't know what to do when it was freezing, when it was alone, when it was terrified. Claire pulled out her phone again, not to check for signal this time, but to look at photos. She scrolled through pictures of her and Derek from better times, or what she'd thought were better times. Their wedding day, his arm around her waist, her leaning into him, both of them smiling like they believed in forever. When had it gone wrong? When had he stopped loving her? Or had he ever loved her at all? Maybe V was right. Maybe Derek had been looking for the right moment to leave from the very beginning. Maybe Claire had just been what Beth would call a placeholder, someone to fill time until something better came along. The phone battery was at 30%. Claire closed the photos. She needed to save power, in case she survived this and needed to call for help, in case Derek came back and she needed to call the police. She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed harshly in the quiet car. Derek wasn't coming back. That much was crystal clear. He'd probably already called V from the airport, already told her it was done, already started his new life without the burden of a wife and child. Another contraction, stronger this time. The pain was different now, deeper, more insistent. Claire doubled over as much as her seatbelt allowed, counting seconds through gasps. 85 seconds. 3 minutes since the last one. Her water still hadn't broken. That was good. That was very good. Once her water broke, things would move fast. Too fast. And she needed time. Needed help to arrive before Ruby decided to make her entrance into this frozen, hostile world. Claire looked out the window. Snow had piled halfway up the door now, drifting against the car like it was trying to bury her alive. The world outside was completely white. No definition, no shapes, just white and more white in every direction. She thought about her mother. Mom had died 2 years ago, cancer that moved through her body with brutal efficiency. 3 months from diagnosis to death, barely time to say goodbye properly. Claire had been with her at the end, holding her hand in the hospice room, telling her it was okay to let go, that she'd be okay, that everything would be okay. What would Mom say now if she could see Claire here, abandoned and alone, giving birth in a frozen car? Mom would be furious, absolutely incandescently furious. Mom had never really liked Derek. She'd been polite about it, had smiled at the wedding and welcomed him into the family. But Claire remembered the look on her face the night before the ceremony, that tight smile, that worry in her eyes. "Are you sure about this?" Mom had asked while helping Claire into her dress for the rehearsal dinner. "I love him," Claire had said simply. "Love isn't always enough, sweetheart. You need respect too. Partnership. Trust." Mom had paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not sure Derek knows how to give those things." "Mom, don't." "Okay, okay." Mom had held up her hands in surrender. "I just want you happy. That's all." Claire hadn't thought about that conversation in years. She'd pushed it down, ignored it, because admitting Mom was right meant admitting she'd made a mistake. A big mistake. A 6-year mistake that had led her here, to this moment, alone and freezing and giving birth without help. Cold was getting worse. Claire's teeth started chattering, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silent car. She clenched her jaw to stop it, but that made her face ache, made her head pound. Her whole body hurt. Pregnancy hurt. Labor hurt. Being abandoned hurt most of all. She looked at the mess scattered around the car, maps in the door pocket, tissues in the center console, Derek's jacket around her shoulders, the ice scraper on the floor. She started organizing them with shaking hands, needing to control something, anything, even if it was just the arrangement of objects in a dying car. She folded the maps neatly, stacked the tissues in a perfect pile, lined up the ice scraper and the tissues and the maps in precise rows. Organization meant control. Control meant safety. Safety meant nothing was safe right now, but doing something was better than doing nothing. Another contraction. 90 seconds, 2 minutes since the last one. This was happening. This was really happening. Ruby was coming here in this car, in the freezing cold, with no help and no hospital and no pain medication. Claire felt panic rising, the kind that stole breath and made vision narrow and heart race. She forced herself to breathe, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like the childbirth class had taught. But breathing didn't stop contractions, didn't stop the cold, didn't stop the fear. She pulled out her phone one more time. Still no signal. But she opened her contacts anyway, scrolled to Derek's name. Her thumb hovered over the call button. What would she say if he answered? What could she say? You abandoned me. You left me to die. You planned this. You're the worst kind of coward. But she didn't call, because he wouldn't answer. And even if he did, what good would it do? Derek had made his choice. He'd chosen V, chosen freedom, chosen a life that didn't include responsibility or consequences. Claire deleted Derek's contact, just pressed the little trash icon, confirmed the deletion. Gone. It felt good, a tiny victory in a night of catastrophic losses. She went through her phone, deleting everything else too. His photos, his texts, his voicemails. All of it gone, erased, like she could erase him from her life as easily as she could erase him from her phone. The battery was at 20% now. Claire put the phone away, pulled the jacket tighter. The cologne smell was almost gone now, replaced by the smell of the car, old upholstery, stale air, fear. Outside, a sound made her heart leap. Was that an engine? Was that a car? Claire's head snapped up. She pressed her face to the window, squinted through the snow, desperate to see headlights, to see help arriving. Nothing, just wind, just her imagination playing cruel tricks. No one was coming. Another contraction. This one making Claire cry out despite her determination to stay quiet. The pain was sharper now, lower, different. She gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went white. When it passed, she checked the dashboard clock, then remembered it had stopped at 7:42. The moment the car died, the moment Derek left, the moment her old life ended and this new nightmare began. How long had it been? An hour? 2 hours? Time felt strange, stretched out and compressed simultaneously, like she was living in a different dimension where normal rules didn't apply. Claire's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since lunch, had been planning to eat dinner after her doctor appointment, the appointment Derek had driven past, the appointment that led to this empty road. She opened the center console, found a granola bar. It was smashed, the wrapper torn, but still sealed. She tore it open with her teeth, ate half, forced herself to save the rest. She didn't know how long she'd be here. Rationing seemed smart. Survival seemed necessary. The granola bar tasted like cardboard, but it was something. Energy. Fuel for whatever came next. Claire leaned her head back against the seat, closed her eyes just for a moment, just to rest. But another contraction hit, and her eyes flew open. She gasped, counted, 95 seconds. 90 seconds since the last one. This was it. The baby was coming soon. Maybe within hours, maybe less. And Claire had absolutely no idea what to do. The water broke at hour 3. Claire felt the warm gush, different from anything else she'd experienced, unmistakable in its finality. Her jeans were soaked. The seat beneath her was soaked, and contractions immediately became exponentially worse. as if her body had been waiting for this signal to shift into a gear she didn't know existed. Much worse. She had maybe 2 hours left, maybe 3 if she was lucky. The childbirth instructor had said first babies took forever, 12 hours, sometimes 20, plenty of time to get to the hospital. But Claire's body had other plans. Ruby had other plans. Her daughter was coming, and she was coming fast. The pain was constant now, a deep ache that never fully went away between contractions. When contractions came, that ache transformed into something else entirely. Knives, fire, her body tearing itself apart to make room for new life. She screamed into the empty car, not caring any more about saving her voice or staying calm. There was no one to hear her anyway, just wind and snow and indifferent mountains. Claire managed to wiggle out of her wet jeans, a process that took 5 agonizing minutes and left her gasping and sweating despite the cold. She used Derek's jacket as a blanket over her legs, tried not to think about how exposed she was, how vulnerable. Cold air on her wet skin made her shake violently. Every muscle trembled. Her teeth chattered so hard she was afraid they'd crack. She braced herself against the steering wheel, the dashboard, the door, anything solid, anything to push against. Between contractions, she tried to remember everything from the childbirth class, breathing techniques, positions, stages of labor. But it all blurred together, a useless jumble of information that meant nothing in this frozen reality. "Okay," Claire said out loud, her voice shaking. "Okay, you can do this. Women have been doing this for thousands of years. Your body knows what to do." But her body didn't know what to do. Her body was screaming at her that something was very wrong, that this wasn't supposed to happen like this, that she needed help, needed a doctor, needed anyone. Another contraction. Claire screamed, the sound raw and animal. When it passed, she was crying, tears streaming down her face, freezing on her cheeks. She thought about her mother again. Mom had given birth at home once to Claire's younger brother, Tommy. The hospital had been too far, the labor too fast. Dad had delivered this baby in their bedroom with instructions from an emergency dispatcher on the phone. Mom had told that story 100 times, made it sound almost fun, an adventure they'd survived together. But now Claire understood. Mom had been terrified. Absolutely, bone-deep terrified. She'd just been good at hiding it, good at making trauma sound like triumph for the sake of the story. Another contraction, Claire screamed again, felt something shift, something move deep inside. Pressure was building, that unstoppable urge to push that the instructor had warned about. "Don't push too early," the instructor had said. "Wait until your body is ready. Wait until you can't not push." Claire couldn't not push. She shifted position, half sitting, half lying back against the seat, legs braced against the dashboard. It wasn't comfortable. Nothing was comfortable, but it was better than nothing. "Okay, Ruby," she whispered, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Okay, baby girl, we're doing this, just you and me. We can do this." Another contraction, stronger than all the others combined. The urge to push was overwhelming, undeniable. Claire gave in, pushed hard, felt something shift, something move, felt Ruby responding to her efforts. She gasped, stopped, breathed, then pushed again. Progress. That was progress. Terrifying, agonizing progress, but progress nonetheless. The next contraction came faster, only 90 seconds later. Claire pushed again, felt more movement, more pressure. So much pressure she thought she might split in two. She reached down, felt wetness, felt something solid. Oh God, that was the baby's head. That was Ruby's head. Claire's hand shook as she pulled it back, not ready to feel that reality yet, not ready to confront what was happening. "Okay," she said again, trying to steady herself. "Okay, this is happening. This is really happening." She thought about the umbilical cord, about cutting it afterward. She'd need something sharp. Claire fumbled in the glove compartment, pushed past the phones and papers, found Derek's pocket knife, the one he used to open packages, to cut fishing line on their one camping trip years ago. She set it on the passenger seat, within reach, for later. After Ruby was born, if Ruby was born, when Ruby was born. Another contraction, longer this time, 90 seconds, maybe more. Claire pushed through all of it, screamed through all of it, felt Ruby moving, Crowning, that's what it was called. Crowning, the ring of fire that women talked about in hushed, horrified tones. Claire understood now. It felt like burning, like tearing, like her body was splitting in half. Please, she sobbed. Please, please, please. She didn't know what she was begging for it to stop, for it to be over, for someone to help her, for Derek to come back and say this was all a mistake, a terrible nightmare she could wake up from. But Derek wasn't coming back. This wasn't a mistake. This was her life now. The contraction passed. Claire panted, her face covered in sweat despite the freezing air. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She looked out the window. Still snowing, still dark, still no cars, no help, no rescue. Just her. Another contraction, the strongest yet. Claire pushed with everything she had, felt Ruby's head emerge fully. Pressure released slightly, then immediately built again as shoulders rotated, as her daughter fought her way into the world. One more push, maybe two. That's all she needed. The next contraction came and Claire pushed, pushed, pushed until she felt Ruby slip free in a rush of fluid and blood in miracle. She caught her daughter in shaking hands, brought her up to her chest. Ruby wasn't crying, wasn't moving, just lying there, silent and still, and covered in vernix, her tiny face blue in the dim light. No, Claire whispered. No, 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 no. She rubbed Ruby's back, patted her chest, cleared her mouth with a finger. Still nothing. Breathe, Claire begged. Please breathe, please. She rubbed harder, patted harder. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She brought Ruby to her face, breathed warm air onto her tiny body, rubbed her back, willed her to live with every ounce of strength she had left. And Ruby gasped. A tiny sound, barely audible. Then a small cry, then a full wail that filled the car with the most beautiful sound Claire had ever heard. Oh, thank God, Claire sobbed, pulling her daughter close. Thank God, thank God, thank God. She held Ruby close, skin to skin, using her body heat to warm the baby. Ruby's cries were weak, not strong enough, not healthy enough, but she was breathing. She was alive. They were both alive. Claire wrapped Ruby in Derek's jacket as best she could, trying to keep her warm. She needed to deal with the umbilical cord next. She tied it off with her shoelace, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. 6 inches from the baby, then 6 inches from that tie. Then she cut between with Derek's knife, her hand trembling so violently she nearly dropped the blade. But she did it. The cord was cut. Ruby was separate now, a whole person, no longer connected to Claire, no longer dependent on her for every breath. Ruby's cries were getting weaker. Cold was too much. Her little lips were turning blue, her skin losing what little color it had. Claire pulled her closer, opened her shirt, tucked Ruby against her bare chest for maximum warmth, then zipped Derek's jacket around both of them. Stay awake, Claire told Ruby, her voice breaking. You have to stay awake. Keep crying. Keep fighting. Please, baby. Please stay with me. But Ruby's cries faded to whimpers, then to nothing. She was breathing. Claire could feel the tiny chest rising and falling, but barely, so barely. Claire felt herself fading too. The blood loss, the exhaustion, the cold, all of it pulling her down into darkness like hands reaching up from deep water. Her vision blurred. Her head felt too heavy to hold up. Her eyes drifted closed, then snapped open. No, sleeping was dying. Sleeping in cold meant not waking up. And if Claire didn't wake up, Ruby didn't survive. She pinched her own arm, hard enough to bruise. The pain brought clarity, sharp and immediate. She did it again and again. Anything to stay conscious, anything to keep darkness at bay. We're survivors, Claire told Ruby, her voice slurring slightly. You hear me? We survived this. We prove him wrong. We show him we don't need him. We never needed him. Ruby didn't respond. Her little body was so still against Claire's chest. Too still. Claire felt panic rising again, that suffocating terror that threatened to steal her last reserves of strength. They needed help, desperately needed help. But help wasn't coming. The storm was worse than before. Snow was deeper. No one was driving this road tonight. No one even knew they were here. Claire's phone buzzed. The sound was so unexpected, so impossible that at first she thought she'd imagined it. But then it buzzed again. She grabbed it from where she'd set it on the passenger seat, 4% battery. But there, flickering, uncertain, barely there, one bar of signal. One bar. Claire dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The call connected, then dropped immediately. No, she whispered. No, 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 please. She tried again. It rang once, twice. Dropped. 3% battery. The bar of signal was gone. Claire wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to give up completely, but giving up meant dying. And she had Ruby now. Ruby needed her. Ruby was depending on her to be strong when she had nothing left. So Claire held her daughter close, breathed warm air onto Ruby's face, whispered promises into darkness. I've got you. I'm not leaving you. We're going to make it. Someone will come. Someone has to come. Snow kept falling. Wind kept howling. Ruby's breathing grew shallower. Claire's grip grew weaker. And the night stretched on forever, each minute an eternity, each second a battle against cold and exhaustion and despair. But Claire Bennett kept fighting, kept breathing, kept willing them both to survive. Because giving up wasn't an option. Not anymore. Not with Ruby's tiny heartbeat against her chest. Proof that miracles could happen even in the darkest moments. Not while there was still breath in her body. Not while there was still hope, however thin, however fragile, that dawn would come and bring rescue with it. Claire held Ruby close and waited for the light. Claire drifted in that space between awake and unconscious, her mind floating somewhere above her body, watching herself from a distance. She was so tired, bone tired, soul tired, the kind of tired that came from using every ounce of strength and having nothing left, not even fumes. Ruby was silent against her chest, still breathing, but the breaths were so shallow Claire had to concentrate to feel them. Tiny little movements of that impossibly small rib cage, proof of life hanging by the thinnest thread. Ectoem. Claire's own breathing had slowed to match her daughter's, their rhythms syncing up as if they were still one person, still connected by more than just love and desperation. Maybe this was how it ended, both of them together, freezing slowly in this abandoned car. A tragedy, a cautionary tale. Woman found dead with newborn in snowstorm. Derek would act devastated, would play the grieving husband, would tell everyone he'd gone for help, would lie and lie and lie until even he believed it. Claire's eyes drifted closed, just for a second, just to rest. Then light, bright white light cutting through darkness, sweeping across the car, moving, getting closer. Claire's eyes snapped open. She lifted her head, which felt like lifting a boulder. Everything hurt, her neck, her shoulders, her entire body screaming in protest. But she forced herself to move, to look. Headlights, real headlights. A vehicle coming up the road, slow but steady, cutting through snow with determination. Help! Someone was coming. Finally, someone was coming. Help! Claire tried to yell, but it came out as barely a whisper. Help us! She reached for the horn with one hand while cradling Ruby with the other, pressed it desperately. No sound. The battery was dead. The horn was dead. Everything was dead. But the headlights kept coming. Closer. Closer. The vehicle began to pass. Claire watched in horror as it continued down the road, not slowing, not stopping. No, 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 she whispered frantically. She pounded on the window with her free hand, used the last of her strength to scream, even though no sound came out. The vehicle's brake lights flashed. It stopped. 50 yards past her car, just sitting there in the middle of the road, exhaust visible in cold air. Then reverse lights. The vehicle backed up slowly, carefully, until it was right alongside Claire's car. A truck, a big semi-truck, the kind that hauled freight cross-country. The engine rumbled loud and alive and real, the most beautiful sound Claire had ever heard. The driver's door opened. A man climbed down, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy dark coat and work boots. He approached Claire's car with purposeful strides, his flashlight beams sweeping across her face. She couldn't see his expression through the glare. just a silhouette backlit by his truck's headlights. He tried her door. Locked. Claire reached over with trembling fingers, fumbled with the lock. Her frozen hands didn't want to work, didn't want to obey commands. Finally, the lock clicked. The door opened. Cold air and snow rushed in, but Claire didn't care. She'd never been so happy to see another human being in her entire life. The man looked at her, then at Ruby bundled against her chest, and his expression shifted from concern to something Claire couldn't quite read. "You're safe now," he said, his voice low and controlled, carrying an authority that made Claire believe him instantly. "Both of you." He didn't hesitate. He reached in carefully, lifted Ruby from Claire's arms with practiced gentleness, tucked her inside his own coat. Then he helped Claire out of the car. She couldn't stand. Her legs buckled immediately. He caught her with one arm, the other still protecting Ruby, and half carried her to his truck. The inside of the truck cab was warm. Wonderfully, impossibly warm. Claire felt the heat on her face and wanted to cry from sheer relief. He sat her in the passenger seat, made sure she was secure, then climbed into the driver's seat with Ruby still inside his coat, one hand on the wheel, the other checking the baby through fabric to make sure she was still breathing. "Hospital," he said, putting the truck in gear. "Where's the nearest hospital?" 40 minutes, Claire managed, her voice hoarse. She pointed with a shaking hand. "That way." He pulled back onto the road, started driving. Fast but controlled, like someone who knew these roads, who'd driven them 1,000 times in worse conditions than this. "I'm Luca," he said after a moment. His voice had that particular quality that came from rarely wasting words. "You're safe now. Claire and Ruby, my daughter, I know." He glanced at her briefly, and in that moment Claire saw his face clearly for the first time. Gray beard, lines around dark eyes, a face that had seen things, hard things. "I see. You're okay now. You're both okay." Claire watched him, this stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere like an answer to prayers she hadn't even known how to form. He had steady hands, a calm presence, moved with efficiency of someone used to handling emergencies. "How long were you out there?" Luca asked, his eyes back on the road. 3 hours, maybe 4. I don't know." "Your husband?" It wasn't quite a question. "He left." The words tasted like poison. Luca's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his beard, but he didn't say anything. Just drove faster, the truck eating up miles between them in safety. Claire felt herself slipping again, the warmth of the truck making her want to surrender, to let someone else be strong for a while. "Stay awake," Luca said, noticing her eyes closing. "I need you to stay awake. Talk to me. Tell me about Ruby." She was just born, in the car, maybe 2 hours ago." "You delivered her yourself." "I had to. That takes strength most people don't have." He said it with quiet certainty, like he knew about strength, about survival, about doing impossible things. The truck kept moving through the storm. Snow was letting up slightly, not much, but enough to see the road more clearly, enough to navigate without feeling like they were driving blind. "Do you live around here?" Claire asked, needing to keep talking, needing to stay awake. "I live everywhere," Luca replied. "I drive trucks. Been doing it for 3 years now." "You like it?" "It's peaceful." He paused. "Gives me time to think." There was something in his voice, something sad and heavy, something that suggested peace hadn't always come easily to him. Ruby made a small sound, a tiny whimper. Luca adjusted his coat, making sure she was secure against his chest. "She's warming up," he said. "That's good. That's very good." The hospital appeared in the distance, a low concrete building with a lit emergency entrance. Luca pulled right up to the doors, put the truck in park, hit his hazard lights. He climbed out, came around to Claire's side, opened the door, helped her down carefully. She held Ruby now. Luca had transferred her back with the same careful gentleness he'd shown from the start. A nurse rushed out with a wheelchair, then another with a heated blanket. They took Ruby, took Claire, wheeled them both inside where it was bright and warm and safe. Claire looked back. Luca stood by his truck, watching, making sure she got inside okay. She raised her hand in a small wave. "Thank you." Thank you for my life. Thank you for my daughter's life. Thank you for being the one person who stopped. He nodded once, just once, then climbed back into his truck. But he didn't drive away. Not yet. He stayed there, engine running, making sure, just to be certain. The automatic doors closed, and the hospital swallowed Claire and Ruby into its sterile embrace. And Luca Moretti sat in his truck in the falling snow, his hands still gripping the steering wheel, his chest tight with memories of another night, another woman, another baby that he couldn't save. But he'd saved these two. That had to count for something. That had to mean something. He waited another minute, watching the emergency entrance, making sure no one came running back out with bad news. When nothing happened, when the doors stayed closed and the lights stayed steady, Luca finally put the truck in gear and drove away into the storm. He had deliveries to make, miles to cover, penance to serve, but for the first time in 3 years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd done something right. The hospital room was too bright, too clean, too warm after hours in the cold. Claire lay in the bed connected to monitors that beeped in steady rhythm, always beeping, a constant reminder that her body was being watched, measured, assessed for damage. The IV in her arm dripped fluids, fighting off hypothermia, fighting off infection, fighting off all the ways the night could have killed her. Ruby was in the warming bassinet beside the bed, wrapped in hospital blankets, a tiny knit cap on her head. She was breathing better now, color returning to her skin slowly but surely. But she was still so small, still so fragile, still marked by the trauma of her entry into this cruel world. Dr. Winter stood at the foot of the bed, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, kind eyes that had probably seen every tragedy imaginable but still managed to care. She clicked her pen, looked at Claire's chart, then set it down with a soft sigh. "You're lucky," Dr. Winter said finally. "Both of you, delivering in those conditions, in that cold. Most women wouldn't have survived." "I didn't have a choice," Claire said, her voice still hoarse from screaming. "Still, what you did was remarkable. Cutting the cord, keeping the baby warm. Those decisions saved her life." Claire looked at Ruby, at her daughter who shouldn't be alive, who was alive because Claire had refused to let her die. "When can we go home?" Claire asked. "A few days. We want to monitor you both, make sure there are no complications." Dr. Winters paused. "And then, you'll need support. Do you have family? Friends?" Claire thought about Beth, about calling her. But Beth lived in a one-bedroom apartment, barely had room for herself. Taking in Claire and a newborn would be too much. "I'll figure it out," Claire said quietly. Dr. Winters looked at her with something like pity, but also respect. "The police were here earlier. They took your statement about your husband, about the abandonment. Did they find him?" "They found his car at JFK Airport. He flew to Las Vegas early this morning." "Of course he did. Of course Derek ran as far and as fast as he could, cowered until the very end. They'll issue a warrant," Dr. Winters continued. "Abandonment of a pregnant woman, reckless endangerment. The charges will be serious." "Good. Let them be serious. Let Derek spend years in prison. Let him suffer even a fraction of what Claire had suffered. But prison wouldn't give her back the 6 years she'd wasted, wouldn't erase the trauma, wouldn't unabandon her." A knock on the door interrupted them. Beth burst in, red curls wild, eyes red from crying, moving like a hurricane of worry and love. She rushed to the bed, wrapped Claire in a hug that hurt but felt necessary, vital, like proof that someone actually cared. "Oh my God," Beth said into Claire's shoulder. "Oh my God, I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" "We're okay," Claire managed. "Derek, that absolute—" Beth pulled back, words failing her. "I can't even. I don't have words for what he is." She turned to look at Ruby, and her expression softened immediately, anger transforming into wonder. "She's beautiful," Beth whispered. "Her name is Ruby." "Ruby." Beth tested it, smiled. "That's perfect." She sat in the chair by the bed, took Claire's hand, squeezed it so tight it almost hurt. "I should have said something sooner," Beth said, her voice thick with guilt. "Should have pushed harder. I knew something was wrong. I knew he was. I knew, and I didn't—" "Beth, stop." Claire squeezed back. I knew too. I just didn't want to believe it. What are you going to do now? I don't know. The enormity of that admission pressed down on Claire like physical weight. The apartment is in his name. The car is wherever it is. Everything we own is legally his. You'll stay with me, oh even me, Beth said immediately, as long as you need. Beth, you don't have room. I'll make room. You're not doing this alone. I won't let you. Claire felt tears building again, the grateful kind, the kind that came from realizing you weren't as alone as you thought. Another knock. A man appeared in the doorway and Claire's breath caught. Luca. He stood there in his dark coat, still wearing his work boots, looking uncomfortable in the sterile hospital environment. His eyes found Ruby first, then Claire, and something in his expression shifted. Relief maybe, or satisfaction at seeing his rescue succeed. Sorry, he said quietly. Didn't want to intrude, just wanted to check. Make sure you both made it okay. Luca, Claire said, you stayed? In the waiting room, figured I should know how things turned out. He stepped into the room slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure he belonged there. He looked at Ruby and her bassinet, and his expression did something complicated. Softened but also tightened, as if looking at the baby brought both joy and pain. She's beautiful, he said simply. She wouldn't be here without you, Claire replied. You would have made it. You're strong. I'm not that strong. You delivered your own baby in a snowstorm during a blizzard. His tone was matter of fact. That's the definition of strong. Beth looked between them, curious, confused. Claire quickly introduced them, explained what had happened. Beth's expression went from confused to amazed to something like awe. You saved them, Beth said to Luca. I was just driving through. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. Still, most people wouldn't have stopped. Luca shrugged but didn't respond. His eyes went back to Ruby, lingered there. Do you have kids? Claire asked, then immediately wished she could take the question back when she saw his expression change. Something shuddered behind his eyes. Pain, recent and raw, the kind that hadn't healed because maybe it never would. No, he said quietly. Not anymore. The way he said it, Claire understood immediately. Loss. Recent loss. The kind that still hurt when you breathed. I'm sorry, she said softly. It's okay. But it wasn't okay, and it wasn't a long time ago, despite what his words claimed. Claire could see the truth in the tightness around his eyes, in the way his hand clenched briefly at his side before relaxing. Another knock. This time a police officer, young and nervous, apologizing for the interruption, but needing to ask more questions. Luca took that as his cue to leave. Wait, Claire said. How do I need to thank you properly. I need to. You don't, Luca interrupted gently. You just take care of that little girl. That's thanks enough. He nodded to Beth, to the police officer. Then he was gone. Footsteps fading down the hall, disappearing like he'd been a ghost. A guardian angel who materialized when needed and vanished when the crisis passed. Claire wanted to call him back, to get his number, to stay connected somehow. But she was too slow, too tired, and the moment passed before she could act. The police officer sat down, pulled out a notepad, started asking questions about Derek, about the car, about everything that happened. Claire answered mechanically. Yes, he planned it. No, she had no idea where he was now. Yes, she wanted to press charges. Yes, she understood there would be an investigation. The officer wrote everything down, said they'd be in touch, said Derek would face consequences, said justice would be served. But justice felt hollow. What good was Derek in prison if Claire and Ruby were homeless and broke? After the officer left, Beth stayed. She pulled her chair close, held Claire's hand while Claire cried. Not sad crying, angry crying, the kind that came from months of suppressed rage finally finding release. I knew, Claire said between sobs. I knew something was wrong. Why didn't I leave? Because leaving is hard, Beth said quietly, especially when you're pregnant, especially when you love someone, even when they don't deserve it. I don't love him anymore. Good, he doesn't deserve your love. Ruby started fussing, small sounds that would turn into cries if ignored. Claire reached into the bassinet, picked her up carefully, brought her to her chest. Ruby quieted immediately, content just being close. You're a natural, Beth observed. I'm terrified. That's being a parent. Terror and love and hoping you don't screw it up too badly. They sat in silence for a while, Beth scrolling on her phone, Claire holding Ruby, the monitors beeping their steady reassurance. Then Beth gasped, sat up straight. What? Claire asked. Derek, he... Beth turned her phone around, showed Claire a series of credit card statements. Oh, this is bad. What is it? These are yours, your credit cards. All of them maxed out, $50,000 in debt. Claire felt sick. She stared at the numbers, the charges, the dates, all recent, all within the last 3 months. How did you get these? Claire asked. I have a friend who works in billing. She pulled your credit report when you were admitted. Claire, this is all gambling. Look at the charges. All casinos, all Vegas. So Derek hadn't just abandoned her. He'd destroyed her financially too. Left her with mountains of debt she couldn't pay. Debt that would follow her for years, roosted her credit, make everything harder. I'm ruined, Claire whispered. Not ruined. We'll fight this. We'll prove it was fraud. You'll get a lawyer. With what money, Beth? Beth didn't have an answer for that. The door slammed open. Vivian Bennett stormed in wearing pearls and fury, her eyes finding Claire, finding Ruby, her expression twisting into something ugly. How dare you, Vivian hissed. Get out, Claire said immediately. You trapped my son. You ruined his life. And now you're trying to destroy him with lies. Lies? Claire's voice was ice. Your son abandoned me in a snowstorm while I was in labor. That's not a lie. That's what happened. That's not what Derek told me. He said he went for help. He said you were unstable, hysterical. He feared for his safety. Beth stood up, stepped between Vivian and the bed. Lady, you need to leave. Now. I'm talking to my daughter-in-law. I'm not your daughter-in-law anymore, Claire interrupted. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm pressing charges against your son for abandonment, fraud, and every other crime I can think of. Vivian's face turned red. She pointed at Claire, her fingers shaking with rage. You're nothing, she spat. You always were nothing. A little nobody who thought she could trap a Bennett. Well, it didn't work. Derek is free, and you're stuck with that mistake. She gestured dismissively at Ruby. She'd called her a mistake, called this innocent baby, this miracle, a mistake. Something snapped in Claire. All the fear and pain and anger concentrated into one burning point of clarity. Get out, Claire said, her voice deadly calm. Get out before I call security. And don't ever come back. You're not welcome in our lives. Not now, not ever. Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, realized she'd lost. She turned and left, heels clicking down the hall, getting fainter, then gone. Beth sat back down, exhaled slowly. That woman is poison, Beth said. I should have cut her off years ago. They smiled at each other, exhausted smiles, survivor smiles, the kind that came after enduring something terrible together. Ruby fussed again. Claire adjusted her, checked her diaper, changed it with shaking hands. Beth helped, and between the two of them, they figured it out. Trial and error, learning as they went. We'll be okay, Beth said quietly. I don't know how yet, but we will. Claire wanted to believe her, wanted to believe things would work out, but all she could see was the mountain ahead, the debt, the divorce, the single motherhood, the everything. Outside the window, the sun was rising, pink and gold against white snow. A new day, a new beginning. Whether Claire was ready or not, the hospital discharged them on the third day. Ruby was healthy enough, Claire was stable enough, and insurance wouldn't cover more, so out they went into the cold December morning. Beth drove them to her apartment in Queens. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, a couch that folded into a bed. She'd cleared space, made room, did her best to accommodate 2 unexpected house guests. It's not much, Beth said apologetically as she unlocked the door. It's perfect, Claire replied, though it wasn't perfect. It was cramped and awkward and temporary, a way station rather than a destination. Beth worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital. That meant Claire was alone with Ruby most of the time, a newborn in someone else's space, trying not to be a burden, trying not to take up too much room, trying to be invisible when invisibility was impossible with a crying baby. Ruby cried at night, colicky and inconsolable, those high-pitched wails that pierced walls and shattered sleep. Claire walked her for hours, bouncing, shushing, apologizing to Beth through the thin wall. "I'm so sorry," Claire would whisper. "Don't be sorry," Beth would call back, though her voice carried exhaustion. "Babies cry. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. During the day, while Ruby slept, Claire made phone calls to lawyers about the divorce, about the debt, about Derek's charges. They all said the same thing: it would take months, maybe years. The debt would be hard to prove as fraud. The divorce would be messy. Derek could claim the abandonment never happened, that it was her word against his. "But I gave birth in a car," Claire protested. "That's proof." "That's proof of birth," one lawyer said carefully, "not proof of abandonment. He could claim he went for help and got lost, that the storm was worse than expected. Without witnesses, without evidence, it becomes complicated." Complicated. Everything was complicated. Claire hung up, stared at her phone, at the $312 in her checking account, at the impossibility of paying legal fees when she could barely afford diapers. She had nothing. Derek had taken everything: the apartment, the car, the money, the future they had planned. All of it gone, leaving her with only Ruby and debt and the crushing weight of starting over from less than zero. A week passed, then two. Claire applied for food stamps, for government assistance, for anything that would help. The paperwork was endless, the questions invasive. The looks from the social workers ranged from sympathetic to judgmental. "Where's the father?" they'd ask. "Gone." "Child support?" "Working on it." "Family?" "My mother's dead. My father left when I was 3. "Friends?" Claire would think of Beth, generous, exhausted Beth who was giving everything and getting nothing in return. "I'm staying with a friend." "How long can you stay there?" "I don't know." That was the truth. She didn't know. Beth never complained, never asked Claire to leave. But Claire saw the strain. The way Beth's smile got tighter. The way she spent more time at work. The way she looked at Claire sometimes, like she was a problem that needed solving. One afternoon, 3 weeks after the hospital, someone knocked on Beth's door. Claire answered, Ruby on her hip, formula stain on her shirt, hair unwashed for 2 days. Luca Moretti stood in the hallway. Same dark coat, same gray beard, holding a bag of groceries. "Luca," Claire said, shocked. "How did you find me?" "I asked at the hospital." He looked uncomfortable, like he regretted coming. "Figured you might need help. You can't just track people down. That's stalking." "You're right. I'm sorry. I should have thought." He started to turn away. "Wait." Claire felt immediate guilt. "I'm sorry. Everything is hard right now. Come in, please." Luca hesitated, then stepped inside. He set the groceries on the counter. Claire peeked in the bag: diapers, formula, actual groceries. Everything she needed and couldn't afford. "You didn't have to do this," Claire said. "I know, but I wanted to." Ruby fussed. Claire bounced her, tried to calm her, but Ruby kept crying that high-pitched newborn cry that grated on nerves and broke hearts. "Can I?" Luca asked, holding out his arms. Claire hesitated. She barely knew this man, but something in his expression, that sadness, that loss, made her trust him. She handed Ruby over. Luca took her gently, cradled her against his chest, started swaying in a natural rhythm that spoke of experience, of muscle memory. Ruby quieted almost immediately, settling against him like she belonged there. "You're good at that," Claire observed. "I used to be." That sadness again, threading through his words. They stood in awkward silence, Luca swaying with Ruby, Claire watching, the apartment feeling smaller with him in it, but also safer somehow. "I have a proposition," Luca said finally. "Okay." "I have property, about 20 acres outside the city, main house and a guest house. The guest house is empty, has been for 2 years. He paused. "You could stay there, you and Ruby, until you get on your feet." "I can't accept that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know you, because it's too much." It's not charity, Luca said, his voice carrying quiet conviction. It's offering. I don't see the difference. Luca looked at her, really looked at her, his dark eyes serious. You have a newborn. You have no money. You're living on your friend's couch. Pride is expensive. You can't afford it right now. The words stung because they were true. Claire's jaw tightened. And what do you get out of this? She asked. Nobody helps for nothing. There's always something. Peace, Luca said quietly. Maybe forgiveness. The way he said it, cryptic and heavy, suggested depths Claire didn't understand yet. Ruby started fussing again. Luca handed her back carefully, and Claire took her, felt the weight of her daughter, the responsibility, the impossible task of keeping her safe and fed and warm. Let me think about it, Claire said. Of course. Luca pulled a card from his pocket, just a phone number written in pen on the back of a gas station receipt. Call me when you decide. He left, and the apartment felt empty without him. Too empty. Claire looked at the groceries he'd brought, at the card with his number, at Ruby who needed so much and deserved so much. Pride was expensive. Luca was right about that. That evening when Beth came home from work, she saw the groceries and asked where they came from. Claire explained. Beth listened, then sat down heavily on the couch. You should take his offer, Beth said. You don't think it's weird, a stranger offering free housing? Maybe, but what choice do you have? Beth's voice was gentle but honest. I love you, Claire. You know I do. But this apartment is too small for 3 people. I'm working doubles just to cover expenses. You need somewhere stable for Ruby. I know, Claire whispered. I know, and I'm so sorry for... Don't apologize. Just take the offer. At least check it out. If it feels wrong, you leave. But you have to do something. Claire nodded. Beth was right. Beth was always right. She called Luca that night after Ruby was asleep, after Beth had gone to bed. She called and he answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting. I'll come see the place, Claire said. No promises, just to look. That's all I'm asking. They made plans. Tomorrow. Beth's day off. She'd drive Claire and Ruby out there, just in case, just to be safe. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay on Beth's couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about trust and risk and the fact that Luca had already saved her life once. Maybe he was genuine. Maybe good people still existed in a world that seemed determined to prove otherwise. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. Or maybe she was being naive. Maybe this would end badly. Maybe she'd regret it. But regret was better than freezing, better than homelessness, better than watching Ruby suffer because Claire was too proud to let people help. Ruby stirred in her bassinet, made small sounds, not crying, just existing, being a baby, being perfect. Okay, Claire whispered to her daughter. We'll try. We'll take the chance, for you, because you deserve better than a fold-out couch, better than instability, better than a mother too proud to accept help when it's offered. She closed her eyes, tried to sleep, dreamed of snow and storms and headlights cutting through darkness, dreamed of Luca's steady hands taking Ruby, taking control, taking care. Maybe this would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But at least it was something. At least it was forward motion. At least it was hope, however fragile, however uncertain. And hope, Claire was learning, was sometimes the only thing that kept you alive when everything else tried to kill you. The guest house was beautiful. Claire hadn't expected that. She'd expected, what, a shack? Something run down and barely habitable? Something that matched her mental image of what a truck driver could afford? But this was gorgeous. Wood siding painted pale blue. A small porch with 2 rocking chairs that looked hand-carved. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen with appliances that actually worked. A bathroom with a tub deep enough to actually bathe in. Everything clean and maintained and loved. Like someone had cared for this place even while it sat empty. This is too much, Claire said, standing in the living room while Beth explored the bedrooms with Ruby in her arms. Luca stood in the doorway, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. It's just sitting here. Might as well be used. But why? Why help me? He was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the main house visible through trees. Larger than the guest house, Same pale blue siding, same careful maintenance. The property stretched in all directions, 20 acres of privacy, of isolation, of space to breathe. My wife died 3 years ago, Luca said finally, his voice low. Complications during childbirth. The baby too. Both of them gone in a day. Claire felt her chest tighten. Luca, I'm so sorry. When I found you that night, you and Ruby, he paused, choosing the words carefully. It felt like a second chance to do something right. You couldn't have saved them. That wasn't your fault. My head knows that. He tapped his temple. My heart doesn't. Claire understood then, the sadness she'd seen in his eyes, the way he'd held Ruby with such practiced gentleness, the reason he lived alone in 20 acres of isolation, driving trucks for penance rather than profit. So that's why, she said softly, you're trying to heal yourself by helping me. Luca looked at her directly. If that's something you can live with, then yes. Claire thought about it, thought about the wife he'd lost, the baby that never got to take a breath, thought about Luca carrying that grief for 3 years, driving endless miles trying to outrun it, thought about how finding her and Ruby must have felt, like the universe offering a chance at redemption, at making peace with what couldn't be changed. Okay, Claire said, we'll stay for a while, until I figure things out. Stay as long as you need. Beth appeared from the bedroom, smiling. This place is perfect. The nursery has everything, crib, changing table, even a rocking chair. It's like someone prepared it for you. Luca had prepared it. Claire could see that now. He'd stocked the house, furnished it, made it ready for them, probably working on it since the hospital, probably needing to do something with his hands and his grief. That afternoon, Beth helped move the few things Claire had. Clothes, diapers, the bassinet from the hospital. It took one trip, everything she owned fitting in Beth's back seat. That truth hurt more than Claire wanted to admit. That night in the guest house, Claire put Ruby to bed in the nursery, then walked through the space touching walls, opening cabinets, making sure it was real. She ended up in the kitchen, found everything she needed. Pots, pans, dishes, silverware. Like Luca had anticipated her needs before she even knew what they were. She made tea, stood at the window looking out at the main house. Lights were on inside. She could see Luca moving around, a shadow behind curtains, alone in that big house with his memories and his grief. What was his story? Who was his wife? What had her name been? How had he survived, losing both wife and child in one day? Claire wanted to know, but also didn't. Some pain was too private to share, too personal to ask about. Ruby cried from the nursery. Claire went to her, picked her up, changed her, fed her. The routine was becoming natural now, less panic, more confidence. She was learning to be a mother through trial and error, through exhaustion and love and the stubborn refusal to let Ruby feel her fear. We're okay, Claire whispered to her daughter. This is okay. We're safe here. Days turned into weeks. Claire settled into a rhythm. Wake with Ruby, feed her, change her, play with her, nap when Ruby napped, do it all again. The simple routines of new motherhood made easier by having space, having resources, having a place that felt like safety rather than temporary refuge. Luca kept his distance. He'd leave groceries on the porch, fresh produce and meat, and everything she needed. He'd wave if he saw her outside. But he didn't intrude, didn't hover, gave her space to breathe and heal and figure out her next steps. Sometimes Claire would see him working, fixing the fence, splitting wood, driving his truck in and out. Always busy, always moving. Like if he stopped, grief would catch up. One afternoon, a car pulled up to the main house. Expensive car, black and gleaming, the kind that cost more than most people made in a year. A man got out, younger than Luca, but with similar features. Brother, maybe. Claire watched from her window as Luca greeted him. They talked. The younger man looked toward the guest house, pointed. Luca shook his head, said something. The younger man laughed, not a kind laugh, a skeptical one. They went inside the main house. An hour later, the man left. Luca came to the guest house afterward, knocked. Claire answered with Ruby on her hip. That was my brother, Marcus, Luca said without preamble. He stopped by. I wanted to explain before you heard something. Okay, Claire said carefully. He thinks it's odd, me letting you stay here. He doesn't understand. And what did you tell him? That it's none of his business. Luca's expression was unreadable. He means well, he just worries. About people taking advantage? Something like that. They stood in awkward silence. Luca looked like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Your brother, Claire said, is he like you? Luca understood the real question. He's still in the business, the family business. I walked away. He thinks I made a mistake. The business, not a business, the business. The way he said it suggested something specific, something he didn't want to explain in detail. Well, thank you for telling me, Claire said, and thank you for defending me to him. Luca nodded, then looked at Ruby, smiled faintly. She's getting bigger. 6 weeks old tomorrow. How are you doing, really? Claire considered lying, saying fine, but something about Luca invited honesty. I'm scared, she admitted. The divorce is taking forever. Derek hired expensive lawyers. Mine is court-appointed and overwhelmed. The debt? I'll be paying it off for years. And Derek's claiming trauma, saying he can't work because of stress from the charges. Luca's jaw tightened. That's garbage. Well, the system moves slowly, and Derek's mother hired him the best representation money can buy. Vivian. Luca said the name like it tasted bad. You know her? I know of her. She's the kind of pawn who thinks money solves everything. Claire wanted to ask how he knew about Vivian, about Derek's family, but Luca was already stepping back. Let me know if you need anything, he said. He left before she could argue. That evening, while Ruby slept, Claire did what everyone does. She Googled him. Luca Moretti, truck driver. The results were sparse. No social media, no Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, like he didn't exist online. She tried different searches. Luca Moretti property. Still nothing except public records, property taxes, vehicle registration. Nothing personal. Luca Moretti business. A few old articles appeared. Moretti operations, family business. Federal investigation, dismissed. Nothing detailed, nothing recent. It was strange. Most people had some digital footprint, but Luca was a ghost online, as if he had deliberately erased himself from the internet's memory. Or maybe after losing his wife, he'd deleted everything. Maybe the internet reminded him too much of the life he'd lost. Claire gave up, closed her laptop. Maybe he was just private. Maybe that was okay. Maybe she didn't need to know everything about the man who'd saved her life and given her shelter. Some mysteries could stay mysterious. That night, Derek called. First time since the abandonment. Claire's phone rang at midnight, and she answered without thinking, still half asleep. What do you want? She asked, her voice harsh with sleep and anger. I need you to drop the charges, Derek said. His voice, she'd forgotten how much she hated his voice. This is ruining my life. Good. Claire, I can't work, can't travel, I'm facing prison. You should be. I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't punish me forever. One mistake? Claire laughed, actually laughed. Derek, you abandoned me while I was in labor. You destroyed my credit. You stole from me. You planned this for months. I didn't steal. We're married. What's yours is mine. Not anymore. I filed for divorce. You'll never survive alone. You need me. Claire laughed again, harsher this time. I survived giving birth alone in a snowstorm. I think I can handle life without you. This is because of him, isn't it? Derek's voice turned mean, ugly. That trucker. I know you're living on his property. You couldn't even wait. I'm not sleeping with him, and even if I was, it's none of your business. It is my business. You're still my wife. On paper only, and not for long. Silence on the line. Then Derek's voice dropped lower, nastier. You think you're so strong now, so independent, but you're nothing. You'll always be nothing. And that baby, that mistake, she'll grow up knowing her mother destroyed her father. Claire's hands shook. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone, wanted to reach through the line and hurt him the way he'd hurt her. But she didn't. She took a breath, steadied herself. Ruby will grow up knowing her father was a coward, Claire said calmly. That's on you, not me. She hung up, blocked his number, sat in the dark, shaking. A knock on the door made her jump. Claire looked at the clock, 12:30 in the morning. Who would knock now? She checked the peephole. Luca. She opened the door. I heard yelling, he said quietly. Are you okay? Derek called. What did he want? Me to drop the charges, me to admit I'm nothing. The usual. Luca's expression darkened in a way that would have scared her if it had been directed at her. But it wasn't. It was protective anger, the kind that came from caring. He can't contact you, Luca said. Isn't there a restraining order? It's temporary, and he called from a blocked number. I didn't know it was him. This is harassment. It's Derek. Luca stepped inside without asking, went to the windows, checked the locks, checked the back door, made sure it was secure. You need better security, he said, and cameras, motion sensors. Luca, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice carried absolute certainty. You're safe here. I promised you that. I'm keeping that promise. The intensity in his voice, the protection, Claire felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not attraction exactly, more like recognition. Like she was seeing him clearly for the first time, understanding that this man would keep her safe, not because he wanted something from her, but because it was simply who he was. Thank you, she said quietly. He left, but not before checking every window one more time. Claire locked the door behind him, stood there with her hand on the deadbolt, feeling safer than she had in months. Derek's words lingered, you're nothing. But standing in this house that Luca had prepared for her, knowing he'd install cameras tomorrow to keep her safe, knowing Ruby was asleep in the next room safe and warm, Claire didn't feel like nothing. She felt like someone worth protecting, worth helping, worth saving. And maybe that was the beginning of healing. Not forgetting what Derek had done, but refusing to let his words define her reality. She went to Ruby's room, looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully, unaware of the complications of her parentage. He can't hurt us, Claire whispered. Luca won't let him, and I won't let him. We're survivors, baby girl. Both of us. Ruby slept on, her tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm of innocent trust. And Claire stood watch, a mother learning to be the guardian her daughter needed. The cameras went up the next day. Luca installed them himself, two pointing at the guest house entrance, one covering the back door, one watching the long driveway that led from the main road. Professional-grade equipment, the kind that recorded in high definition even in darkness, that sent alerts when motion was detected. He showed Claire how to check them on her phone, how to get alerts, how to save recordings if she needed evidence. If he shows up, you'll know, Luca said, demonstrating the app. And so will I. These feed to my phone too. Thank you, Claire said, watching him work. His movements were efficient, practiced, like he'd done this before many times. Stop thanking me, he said without looking at her. But Claire couldn't stop. Every kindness felt massive, overwhelming. She wasn't used to people helping without wanting something back, without strings attached that would strangle her later. A month passed, then 6 weeks. Ruby grew, started smiling, started making sounds that weren't just crying, started recognizing Claire's face and turning her head toward Luca's voice when he spoke. Luca came by more often now, not intrusively, but regularly. He'd hold Ruby while Claire showered, giving her 10 precious minutes of hot water in solitude. He'd fix things around the guest house, a leaky faucet, a squeaky door, things Claire hadn't even asked about or noticed. He was good with Ruby, natural, like being a father was coded into his DNA even though he had never gotten the chance. One afternoon, Marcus returned, pulled up in his expensive car, got out with a briefcase this time. He knocked on Luca's door. Luca let him in. They were inside for 2 hours. Claire watched from her window, curious, concerned. What business did Luca have that required briefcases and long meetings? What was Marcus trying to convince him of? When Marcus left, he looked frustrated, angry even. He got in his car, slammed the door hard enough that Claire could hear it from the guest house, then drove away too fast, tires spitting gravel. Luca came to the guest house right after. He looked tired, worn down, like the meeting had cost him something. Everything okay? Claire asked. Family business. Nothing important. You sure? He nodded but wouldn't meet her eyes. Marcus thinks I should come back. To the business. Says I'm wasting my life out here. What do you think? I think I'm done with that life. His voice was firm, final. I walked away for a reason. I'm not going back. Claire wanted to ask more. What business exactly? What had he walked away from? But the look on his face told her this conversation was closed. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Something was off. Something about Luca and Marcus and the way they'd argued. The expensive car, the briefcase, the intensity of Marcus's anger. She got up, walked to the window, looked at the main house. Lights were on in what looked like an office. She could see Luca at a desk, papers spread out in front of him, head in his hands. Whatever he was dealing with, it was heavy, complicated, more than just family drama. Claire made a decision. She wrapped Ruby in a blanket, walked across the yard to the main house in her pajamas, knocked softly. Luca answered, surprise clear on his face. Claire, it's 11 at night. I know. Can I come in? He stepped aside. Claire walked into a house she'd never seen the inside of before and stopped. The interior wasn't just nice, it was something else entirely. Hardwood floors that gleamed even in dim light. Furniture that looked handmade, expensive, the kind you found in private showrooms rather than stores. Art on the walls, real art, the kind that museums displayed behind velvet ropes. This wasn't a truck driver's house. This was wealth, serious wealth. Luca, Claire said slowly, looking around. What do you do? He sighed, ran his hand through his hair. I drive trucks. No, I mean, what did you do before? Does it matter? It might. He gestured to the living room. They sat down, Claire in an armchair that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Ruby sleeping in her arms. Luca leaned forward, elbows on his knees, choosing his words carefully. I was in the family business, he said finally. Moretti operations. What kind of business? The kind people don't ask about. He paused. Security, protection, docks, construction. It's almost legal on paper. All legitimate businesses with proper licenses and tax records. But, Claire could hear the unspoken caveat, but the family had connections, influence. We operated in gray areas. We helped people who couldn't go through normal channels. Claire's mouth went dry. You're talking about... I'm talking about a family business that existed for 3 generations before I was born. Luca's voice was careful, measured. I didn't choose it. I was born into it, trained for it, expected to continue it. And you did. For a while, until Emma. His expression changed, softened with old pain. She wanted out, wanted a normal life for our son, made me promise I'd walk away after the baby was born. But they died first. They died first, Luca confirmed quietly. And I kept the promise anyway. Sold what I could, walked away from the business, from the family, from everything. How much money are we talking about? He was quiet for a long moment. Enough. Luca. A lot. He said it flatly, without inflection. More than most people see in a lifetime. Claire stared at him. This man who drove trucks, who lived alone in 20 acres of isolation, who'd saved her life and asked for nothing. He wasn't just wealthy, he was something beyond that. And you drive trucks, she said. After Emma died, I couldn't handle that world anymore. Couldn't handle the weight of it. Started driving because it felt clean, simple, just me and the road. Claire looked around the house again with new understanding. The expensive furniture, the art, the 20 acres. This wasn't just a house, it was a fortress built with money and power most people couldn't imagine. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Would you have accepted help if you knew? No, Claire admitted immediately. I would have assumed you wanted something, would have run. Exactly, Marcus thinks you're using me. He wanted me to make you sign papers, legal agreements proving you won't claim anything. Claire felt her jaw tighten. I'll sign whatever he wants. You don't have to. I do, because I'm not using you, and I can prove it. Luca looked at her, really looked at her, something shifting in his expression from guarded to open. I believe you. I told Marcus that. But he doesn't understand. He thinks everyone has an angle. And you? I think some people just need help. And I think I needed to help you, for reasons that have nothing to do with money or angles. Claire looked at him across the expensive living room. This man who'd saved her life and given her shelter, who was trying to atone for a past he didn't entirely choose in a wife he couldn't save. Tell me about her, Claire said softly. About Emma, your son. Luca was quiet so long, Claire thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking, words spilling out like he'd been holding them back for 3 years, and they finally found an escape. Emma was a teacher, second grade. She had this laugh that made everyone around her laugh too. She wanted kids for years. We tried, couldn't conceive naturally, did IVF, got pregnant on the third try. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. He paused, swallowed hard. She went into labor early, 32 weeks. Complications, placental abruption. She bled out before they could do an emergency C-section. The baby, our son, his voice broke. Jamie, he didn't make it either. Both of them gone in less than a day. Claire's throat tightened. Luca, I'm so sorry. When I found you that night, you and Ruby, in that car, it felt like the universe giving me a second chance. A chance to save someone. Because I couldn't save Emma. Couldn't save Jamie. You couldn't have saved them. That wasn't your fault. My head knows that. He tapped his temple. My heart doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment, two people carrying grief too heavy for words. Then Claire did something she'd never done before. She stood up, still holding Ruby, crossed to where Luca sat, and hugged him. Just wrapped one arm around him while cradling her daughter with the other. He hugged back, tight, like she was keeping him from falling apart. Like he'd been waiting 3 years for someone to tell him it was okay to still hurt, okay to still grieve, okay to still be broken. They stayed like that for a long time. Two broken people holding each other up. Not romantic, human, just connection, just understanding, just not being alone with their pain for once. When they finally pulled apart, Luca wiped his face, laughed awkwardly. Sorry, that was too much. It wasn't too much. It was honest. He looked at her differently now. Not like a charity case, not like a rescue project, like something more. A car pulled into the driveway. Fast, loud, aggressive. The motion sensor lights came on. Claire looked out the window and felt her blood turn to ice. Derek's car. Derek's face in the driver's seat, illuminated by lights. Derek storming toward the main house like he owned it. He's here, Claire whispered. Luca stood immediately, put himself between Claire and the door. Call the police. Claire grabbed her phone, dialed 911 with shaking fingers, told them what was happening. Derek, restraining order violation. Her address. They said officers were on the way. Derek pounded on the door. Claire, I know you're in there. Luca opened the door, stepped outside, pulled it closed behind him. Claire watched through the window, holding Ruby tight, her heart hammering. Leave, Luca said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. Who the hell are you? Derek demanded. The person telling you to leave. Derek tried to push past. Luca didn't move, just stood there, solid, immovable. You're trespassing, Luca continued in that same calm tone. The police are coming. You should go. This is your fault. You stole my wife. I found your wife freezing to death because you abandoned her. I didn't steal anything. You threw her away. Derek lunged, threw a punch. Luca moved with practiced efficiency. Caught Derek's fist mid-swing, twisted, put him on his knees with one smooth motion that looked easy, effortless. Don't, Luca said quietly. Just that one word, heavy with promise. Derek yelped, tried to pull away. Luca held him there for 3 seconds, making his point, then released him. Derek scrambled back, clutching his wrist, looking between Luca and the house with wild eyes. You think you're so special, Derek spat. But she's using you. She'll take everything. I don't have anything she wants, Luca replied. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Derek heard them too. Panic flickered across his face. He backed toward his car. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Luca said with absolute finality. Police cars pulled into the driveway, two of them, lights flashing. Officers got out, approached Derek, asked for ID. When they ran it, they found the restraining order, the charges, the warrant. They put Derek in handcuffs. He protested, threatened, demanded his lawyer. The officers didn't care. They put him in the back of the cruiser and drove away. Just like that. Over. Luca came back inside. Claire was shaking, holding Ruby too tight, trying not to fall apart now that immediate danger had passed. He's gone, Luca said gently. He won't be back. How do you know? Because now he knows what you have. Protection. Me. He paused. He's a coward. Cowards don't fight when they're outmatched. Claire believed him. For the first time in months, she felt truly safe. Not just physically, but emotionally. Because Luca had stood up for her, had protected her, without asking anything in return. You said you knew how to handle things, Claire said, remembering how easily he'd disarmed Derek. Different life, different skills. Luca's expression was carefully neutral. Some things you don't forget. She wanted to ask more. What kind of family business taught you to disarm someone with one move? What kind of life required those skills? But the answer was obvious. The Moretti family business. The kind with connections and influence. Thank you, Claire said. You're welcome. Ruby woke up, started fussing. Claire rocked her, but she kept crying. Luca watched them with that look again, longing mixed with sadness. Do you want to hold her? Claire asked. Luca hesitated, then nodded. Claire handed Ruby over carefully. He took her like she was made of glass, cradled her against his chest. Ruby settled immediately. You're good with her, Claire said. I had practice, before. The pain in his voice was raw, fresh. Tell me about your son. What were you going to call him? James, Jamie. Luca looked down at Ruby. Emma picked it, said it was strong but gentle. They sat together in the expensive living room, Luca holding Ruby while Claire watched. The night stretched on, but neither of them moved. Eventually, Ruby fell asleep. Luca looked reluctant to give her back. I should let you rest, he said finally. Stay, just a little longer. So he did. They sat in comfortable silence, not needing words, just company, just the shared understanding of people who'd survived impossible things and found each other on the other side. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, something shifted. The grief and trauma that had defined them both started to loosen. Not gone, never gone, but lighter, more bearable. Because they were carrying it together now, sharing the weight, making it possible to keep moving forward. The snow melted, the mountains turned green. Birds came back, filling morning air with songs Claire had forgotten existed. The world woke up from winter's death grip, and Claire woke up with it. Ruby was 4 months old now, rolling over, giggling when Claire made silly faces, grabbing at everything with those tiny, determined hands. Growing so fast, Claire could barely keep up. The divorce was finalized. Derek pled guilty to abandonment charges, 2 years probation, community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order. The credit card debt was ruled fraud. The judge ordered Derek to pay restitution. Claire's credit was cleared, her name restored. Vivian sent a letter, stiff and formal but genuine, an apology for enabling her son, for being blind to his faults. She asked for forgiveness, asked if she could meet Ruby someday. Claire hadn't decided yet. Maybe someday, maybe never. She had time. Beth came over for dinner every week. She and Marcus had started dating, slowly, carefully, learning from Claire and Luca's example. Claire had started freelancing again. Graphic design from home, small jobs at first. Word spread, her client list grew. She could pay rent now, could contribute, could stand on her own feet. But Luca still wouldn't take rent. Said the guest house was hers as long as she needed it. I need to pay something, Claire had argued. Then pay me by letting me be part of Ruby's life, Luca had replied. So that's what she did. Luca came over every evening now, would hold Ruby while Claire cooked, would read to her even though she couldn't understand words yet, would make her laugh. He was good with her, natural. One evening in late spring, Luca invited Claire to the main house for dinner, said he wanted to show her something. Claire bundled up Ruby, walked across the yard. Luca had cooked, Pasta and salad and bread, the table set with candles. Music played softly. "What's the occasion?" Claire asked. "No occasion. I wanted to." They ate, talked. Ruby sat in her high chair, chewing on a teething ring, making happy sounds. The conversation was easy, comfortable. After dinner, Luca pulled out papers, set them on the table. "What's this?" Claire asked. "Foundation papers. I'm starting a nonprofit for mothers in crisis, emergency housing, legal aid, financial assistance, everything you needed and couldn't find." Claire's eyes filled with tears as she read the mission statement, the programs, the funding. "Luca, I can't. I want you to run it," he said. "Be the director. You know what women need. You've lived it." "I'm not qualified." "You're the most qualified person I know." He slid the papers closer. "Women like you deserve better. Deserve someone fighting for them." Claire looked at him across the table, at this man who'd saved her life, given her shelter, protected her, asked for nothing. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Really?" "Because 3 years ago I couldn't save the woman I loved," Luca said quietly. "But maybe I can save others. Maybe I can use the resources I have and turn them into something good. It wasn't meaningless. Emma created you. She did. And now I'm trying to honor that." He paused. "Will you help me?" Claire wiped her eyes, nodded. "Yes, I'll help you." They looked at each other across the table. The candles flickered. The music played softly. Ruby babbled happy sounds. Something had been building between them for months, unspoken but undeniable. "I'm not ready for a relationship," Claire said softly. "I know," Lucia replied. "Derek destroyed my ability to trust." "I know that too. But I think maybe someday, if you're willing to wait." Lucas smiled, that rare, beautiful smile. "I've been waiting 3 years to feel alive again. I can wait as long as you need." He reached across the table, took her hand, just held it. No pressure, no expectations, just connection. "Thank you," Claire said, "for everything, for saving us." "You saved yourself," Lucas said firmly. "I just drove the truck." Ruby threw her teething ring. It bounced off the table. Claire and Luca both laughed, and the moment broke. They cleaned up together. Luca insisted Claire leave the dishes. Claire carried Ruby back to the guest house, put her to bed, then stood at the window looking at the main house, at the lights inside, at Luca's shadow moving around, at this life she'd somehow built from wreckage. She thought about Derek, about the gold and the pain, and the fear, about giving birth alone, about thinking she wouldn't survive. But she had survived. She'd done more than survive. She'd built a new life, found real friends, discovered strength she didn't know she had. Derek's abandonment had felt like the end, like death. But it was actually the beginning, the emergency that forced her to save herself. The prison door had been unlocked all along. She just needed Ruby to show her where the key was. And Luca had simply reminded her that doors open from both sides, that help can come without strings. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from Beth. "How's dinner with your not boyfriend?" Claire smiled, typed back. "Good, really good. You falling for him?" "Maybe." Slowly. "Good. He's one of the good ones." He was. Luca was proof that good men existed, that not everyone lied, that help could come freely. Another text, this time from Luca. "Thank you for dinner and for letting me be part of your lives," Claire replied. "Thank you for giving us a home. It's your home now, for as long as you want it." She looked around the guest house, at the furniture she'd arranged, at Ruby's toys, at the pictures on the walls. Beth holding Ruby, Ruby's first smile, a candid shot of Luca making Ruby laugh. This was home, not the apartment she'd shared with Derek, not Beth's couch. Here, this place, these people. The seasons had changed, winter to spring, death to rebirth, and Claire had changed with them. She heard footsteps outside. Luca was walking the property line, his nightly routine, making sure everything was secure. He caught her watching, waved. She waved back. Tomorrow she'd start planning the foundation, would figure out programs and budgets, would turn her trauma into purpose. But tonight she'd just be grateful. Grateful for survival, for Ruby, for unexpected kindness from a stranger who became family. The snow had melted, spring had come, and Claire Bennett was finally, truly, completely warm. Claire stood at the front of the conference room. 20 women looked back at her, all mothers, all in crisis, all searching for hope. "My name is Claire Bennett," she said, her voice steady, "and I gave birth alone in a car during a blizzard." She told her story: the abandonment, the cold, the fear, the survival, the rescue. Every woman in the room leaned forward, recognizing themselves in her words. "You're not alone," Claire said when she finished, "and you're stronger than you know." This foundation exists because someone believed that. Someone helped me when I had nothing. Now we help you. After the speech, women came up to her, shook her hand, cried, thanked her, told their own stories. Each one different but the same: abandoned, betrayed, surviving against impossible odds. Claire listened to each one, took notes, made plans. These women would get housing, legal aid, childcare, whatever they needed to stand on their own feet. Ruby toddled around the room, 14 months old now, walking, talking in two-word sentences, charming everyone. Luca followed her around, making sure she didn't get into trouble. The foundation had helped 40 women in its first year, given shelter to 23, provided legal representation to 18. And it was just beginning. That evening, back at the house, Luca cooked dinner. He did that now, lived in the guest house with Claire and Ruby. The main house sat mostly empty except for his office. They'd gotten together officially 6 months ago. Slow and careful, building trust brick by brick. "Ruby called me Dada today," Luca said over dinner, his voice catching. "She did?" Claire looked up. "At the grocery store. Someone asked if I was her father. She said Dada." His expression was complicated, joy mixed with grief. "Is that okay?" Claire asked carefully. "I can correct her if it bothers you." "It doesn't bother me." Luca's eyes were bright. "It honors me." They were getting married in the fall. Small ceremony, just Beth and Marcus and a few close friends. Not because Claire needed marriage, but because she wanted it. Wanted to choose Luca, wanted to build a family intentionally. Derek was in California somewhere, working construction, paying restitution. Vivian had disowned him. She saw Ruby twice a year now, supervised visits that were improving slowly. Beth had started dating Marcus seriously. They were taking it slow too. Life was good. Not perfect. Ruby still woke up at night sometimes. The foundation had growing pains. Claire still had nightmares about the snow. But she was alive. Ruby was thriving. Luca was home. That's what he was. Home. Not the place, the person. The man who'd stopped when everyone else drove past. That night after Ruby was asleep, Claire and Luca sat on the porch. Spring air, cricket sounds, stars overhead. "Do you ever regret it?" Claire asked. "Stopping that night?" "Never." Luca's voice was firm. "Not even when things are hard." She laughed, leaned against him, felt his arm around her shoulders. Felt safe. Felt loved. Felt like she'd finally figured out what home meant. "The hardest part wasn't admitting Derek was wrong," Claire said quietly. "It was forgiving myself for staying." "You stayed because you were loyal. That's not a flaw." "It almost killed me. But it didn't. You survived. You're here." He pulled her closer. "That's what matters." The prison door had been unlocked all along. Derek hadn't trapped her. She'd been her own warden. But Ruby had been the key. The emergency that forced her to find the door, to walk through it, to build a new life on the other side. And Luca had simply reminded her that doors open from both sides, that help exists if you're willing to accept it. The snow had melted a year ago, but Claire was just now realizing what that meant. Winter was over. Spring had come, and she was finally warm enough to notice. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Luca replied. Simple words. But they meant everything, because this time Claire had chosen wisely, had chosen a partner instead of a prison, had chosen truth instead of lies. Ruby called out from her room, not crying, just making sounds. "I'll go," Luca said, standing. He went inside. Claire heard him talking softly to Ruby, heard Ruby's giggles. Father and daughter, even if not by blood, by choice, by love. Claire looked at the guest house, at the lights inside, at the life she'd built from nothing. She finally understood that the prison door had been unlocked all along. She'd been her own warden, yes, but she'd also been her own liberator. The key had been inside her the whole time. Ruby had just helped her remember where she'd put it. Derek had tried to destroy her, had left her to had stolen her money, had done everything possible to break her. But he'd failed, because Claire Bennett was stronger than anyone, including herself, had ever given her credit for. She'd survived the impossible. She'd given birth alone. She'd built a foundation that was changing lives. She'd found love that didn't hurt, that didn't demand, that simply existed as a steady presence saying, I'm here, I'm staying, you're worth it. The spring air was warm. The stars were bright. Inside the house, Luca was putting Ruby back to sleep, humming some lullaby. And Claire sat on the porch watching the night, feeling grateful for every impossible thing that had led her here. To this moment, this life, this home. The snow had melted, spring was here, and Claire Bennett was finally completely radiantly warm.